Hello children. So in this video I'll be teaching you how to draw the human brain. You know that human brain is part of the central nervous system along with the spinal cord. It is one of the most complex organ of our body. We have not been able to still totally decode how actually human brain stores information and all. So it's very complex. However, in simple words, I'll try to explain to you how to draw the human brain. So human brain basically can be divided into forebrain, three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain, which do have technical terms or biological terms. Like forebrain is called prosencephalon, midbrain mesencephalon. अब जिसको मेडिकल में जाना है वो क्लास 11 में जब मिलेगा तभी याद कर लेना, बाकी को दिमाग का दही करने का ज़रूरत नहीं है. So for you, just remember their simple terms because there's an explanation for class 10 level that I am doing. So brain, not only it's the most complex organ, is the CPU of your entire body, and it is very, very delicate as well. So it needs to be protected by something. So our brain, as you all know, it is protected by a hard bony covering, and that hard bony covering, can you guess what it is called? If you are thinking it's skull, it's not actually correct. It is covered or protected by a hard bony covering, and this hard bony covering is called the cranium. It is called the cranium. Cranium is part of the skull. Actually, when we say skull, we mean this thing with entire cranium, the facial bones, the jaw bones, the whole thing is called skull. However, only the brain box is called the cranium. It is something similar to your helmet. Now, if you think about the helmet, between the hard covering of the helmet and your head, there is a soft cushioning of sponge. So same way, between your brain and the hard bony covering cranium, there is a layer of three membranes, fluid, and the space between the membrane is filled with fluid. There's one, this is the second one, and this one is the third membrane. So these membranes, these three membranes are called meninges. You have heard about a disease called meningitis. It is actually inflammation of this membranes, and between the space between the membrane, it is filled with a shock absorbing fluid. So this shock absorbing fluid, which fills the space between the meninges, it is called the cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. Now, why it is called cerebrospinal fluid? Because this fluid is not only found covering the brain, but it is also found covering your spinal cord. So that's a shock absorbing fluid. So cranium along with the meninges containing cerebrospinal fluid acts as the protective covering for your brain. Next we come. So when we say brain, this kind of a picture comes to our mind. A highly folded structure. So this highly folded structure, which is having some upward folds and downward folds, upward fold, downward folds, like this. So this structure, it is the largest part of the brain. It is part of the forebrain. This is called the cerebrum. So cerebrum is the largest part of your brain. This upward folds are called gyri or gyrus, and the downward grooves, these are called sulci. These are made up of billions and billions of cytons. Cytons, you remember, the cell body of the neuron. So these are made up of billions and billions of cyton, and therefore this portion appears to be dark in color. That's why it is called the gray matter. You must have heard in English that gray matter is used to as a synonym for indicating intelligence. So this is the cerebrum. It is believed by scientists that more are the folds, more is the intellect of a person. This cerebrum, if you view from top, it is basically, it has got two hemispheres. Basically has two hemispheres, the left and the right hemisphere. So these are the cerebral hemisphere. Now the part of the hemisphere is divided into different regions, and those regions are called lobes. The front portion of the cerebral hemisphere, these are called the frontal lobes. Frontal lobe is said to be associated with your intelligence, memory, your logical thinking, everything. So this is the portion. Then on the top portion, this is called the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is associated with pressure. Pressure and pain, these centers are located in the parietal lobe. And even temperature control. On the sides, brain का जो side होता है, सर के दो कान के ऊपर के region जो है, these two are called the temporal lobes. Temporal lobes are associated with sound and mechanical pressure. तो जब भी लाउड म्यूज़िक हम लोग सुनते हैं, सर दर्द करता है. कहाँ दर्द करता है? कान के ठीक ऊपर के जगह में दर्द करता है. So that is the temporal lobe associated with sound. And one at the back, this is called the occipital lobe. Occipital lobe. This is associated with vision. So any damage to this portion, नीचे का नहीं, ठीक जहाँ turning होता है, this portion occipital lobe, it is associated with sight. तो कभी कोई आदमी गिर जाता है बेहोश होके, यहाँ चोट लगता है, तो the person may become blind. So that is the function of occipital lobe. Now just below the cerebral hemisphere, we have two club-shaped structure. These club-shaped lobes, these are called the olfactory lobes. Olfactory lobes, ये नीचे में covered रहता है. You cannot see from top. It is covered. Suppose this is the olfactory lobe. It is covered by the cerebral hemisphere like this. So you can see it from below. And it is very quite big in other animals like dogs and all. Olfactory lobes are associated with sensation of smell. Our vision is highly developed, thus olfactory lobes have become smaller. And below the cerebral hemisphere, both the hemisphere are interconnected by an egg-shaped bundles of nerve fibers. Criss-cross connection होता है. That's why it is said that the left side of your body is controlled by right side of your brain, and the right side of your body is controlled by left side of your brain. So these are the different lobes of the cerebral hemisphere. Now, from all these cytons, I told you these are made up of cytons, so billions of axons will come out carrying the information. So this is made up of cytons, so it is dark in color, that's why it is called gray matter. And this portion, ये जो portion है नीचे का, it has a relatively lighter shade, and that's why it is called white matter. So you have gray matter and white matter. Now, just below the cerebrum, there is an undifferentiated portion. there's an undifferentiated portion, and this undifferentiated portion is called the thalamus. So thalamus is another part of the forebrain, cerebrum, thalamus. Thalamus का function क्या होता है कि cerebrum से जो message निकलेगा उसको lower portion of the brain तक ले जाना, और lower portion brain में जो information है, so to carry those information to the cerebrum. So thalamus helps in conducting the information to and from the cerebrum. Now the front portion of the thalamus is slightly rounded, and this rounded portion is called hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, it is the thermostat of your body. Thermostat means, have you seen an electric iron which we use to press our clothes? So when you switch it on, after gaining a certain temperature, it automatically switch off because there is a thermostat, there is a plate which simply gets disconnected. It controls the temperature. So hypothalamus is also the control center of our brain. Like you have seen that we put chandan ka, we take mark चंदन का टीका हम लोग लगाते हैं सर में, जिस जगह पे लगाते हैं, that is actually the position of the hypothalamus. So actually there is a scientific reason for all this, that keeps your hypothalamus cool so that you can focus, because it controls the temperature. And not only that, it has a big nervous as well as hormonal connection with another structure lying below the hypothalamus called the pituitary. Pituitary is a small pea-sized organ, and it is called the master endocrine gland. You will be getting in details in the endocrine chapter. It controls the functioning of all the other endocrine gland of your body, hormonal glands, because it will secrete a number of hormones. And this hypothalamus will control the pituitary in turn through some nervous connection and through some hormones. That's why keeping hypothalamus under control is very, very important. Your temperature, everything, your thought process, everything remains under control. So these are the different parts of the forebrain: cerebrum, thalamus, hypothalamus, and pituitary. Now just below the forebrain, you have this another undifferentiated portion. It has slight rounded lobular structure, and this is marked as midbrain. Now this midbrain has some reflex center, and along with having some reflex centers, it also helps in coordinating the flow of impulses. Information from here to lower brain and from lower brain to this part, that flow will be coordinated by midbrain. It has got two portions. One is called corpora quadrigemina, quadri means you know that it will have four such rounded lobular structure, and another one is crura cerebri. So these are the two parts which forms the midbrain. These are lobular portion, and they mainly help in controlling the flow of information from forebrain to lower brain and from hindbrain to forebrain. Next comes hindbrain. Hindbrain, the most important part of the hindbrain, is the second largest part of the brain, which from a side view it looks like a branch tree. It looks like a branch tree, and this part is called the cerebellum. Cerebellum, it basically controls and coordinates the complex muscular movement of your body. Suppose when I am holding the pencil, moving my pencil, I am moving it in a controlled way. I am not just scribbling around. So that is the function of cerebellum. When we walk, our balance and everything is maintained by cerebellum. This is the second largest part of the brain. From hind view, if you look at from backside, it has two lobes like this, and in between there is a muscular connection. So these are the cerebellum lobes, cerebellar lobes, and there is a connection in between. So cerebellum is highly affected by alcohol. You must have seen how the alcoholics, they walk on the road. They start from the road and end up in drain. Because they lose their muscular coordination, what they are doing, how they are walking, what they are speaking, they don't have any control because the cerebellum gets affected. Now, just below the midbrain, in front of the cerebellum, the portion is slightly rounded like this. This rounded portion, should I write it here? Okay, so all the three parts I can assimilate here. It is called pons varolii. So pons varolii along with midbrain and thalamus forms a kind of communication axis for transfer of information or impulses. And below pons varolii, the structure becomes slightly triangular or pyramidal, you can say. This is a very, very critical portion of the brain. This is called medulla oblongata. So medulla oblongata, probably double L is there, you will just check out whatsoever. So medulla oblongata, this is a very critical portion because it controls all the involuntary actions of your body, like your swallowing, peristalsis, then heartbeat, breathing. All these things are controlled by medulla. Any injury, anyone getting hit here very hard from the back on the head portion can instantly die. That's why it is advisable that you should not be hitting anyone in the lower portion of the brain, because it might damage the medulla, leading to instant death. So that's why it is a very critical organ, controlling all the involuntary actions. And from this medulla, the spinal cord will arise. There is a hole in the cranium, and with the help of that hole, this spinal cord emerges and enters into another protective structure, that is the vertebral column. So overall, this is the structure of the human brain, having three parts: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. The parts of forebrain are cerebrum, thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary, midbrain, and you have the hindbrain, whose parts are cerebellum, pons varolii, and medulla. Thank you.